In this exciting episode, things get personal for Perry as his friend and right-hand detective Paul Drake goes on trial for murder. Let's just hope Perry can get a court order against having to hear the song "I Need a Man" again. It's Perry Mason, Season 3, Episode 6, The Case of Paul Drake's Dilemma. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here, pretty simple. Provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I'm going to do a companion episode for each episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll get to some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Each episode, I give you a brief refresher on the plot, and I compare it with Earl Stanley Gardner's novel if the episode was an adaptation. Next, I list some key pieces of trivia before tackling the episode's theme. We feature a Perry proverb, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before heading to the post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library. Each episode in the law library, we investigate some legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. In this trip to the law library, we discuss the admissibility of a paraffin test. Tell us why you're skeptical, Perry.
I object, Your Honor, to the introduction of any evidence based on the so-called paraffin test.
On what grounds, Mr. Mason?
I refer the court to a recent decision of the Supreme Court of the State of Colorado, reported in 339 Pacific 2nd, page 993.
We actually get a lengthy precedent from Perry. I'll excerpt it here.
The court held in part that the paraffin glove test for dermal nitrates is neither sufficiently certain nor subject to such scientific accuracy as to justify its routine use in establishing whether a suspect or deceased did or did not fire a gun.
Note the date Mason gives. This ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court came in June 1959. The episode was committed to film in September 1959. It was a real case, and it's a real precedent that stuck. That's pretty quick on the turnaround by those script writers. Ripped from the headlines. Perry's been hitting the books. Now let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of Paul Drake's Dilemma. Working titles for this episode included The Case of the Startled Singer and The Case of the Detective's Dilemma. They made the right call. It's a rare episode without the second "the" in the title. Frank Thatcher is stepping out with Donna Kress. She's got dreams of being a singer. Take a listen.
Till the day I die, oh, who'll see.
She also dreams of marrying Frank, but that's not going to happen either, is it?
I looked at this lovely apartment. I said, no, this isn't a surprise. Tonight he's going to tell me that he loves me.
Here, drink this.
Tonight he's going to tell me that he's going to divorce his wife and marry me. And this is just a cute way of proposing to me.
Donna, this is no time to start that
Or
again.
maybe divorce the Dameron Company. Surprise. I am ridding myself of the great Henry W. Dameron. I am divorcing my precious father-in-law. I am divorcing $50 million. Right? This means that you're not going to do any of those things.
On the way home from his extramarital rendezvous, Thatcher hits and kills a pedestrian. Look out, look out, look out! And now, more info emerges on Thatcher. He's the son-in-law of famed and feared Henry Dameron. Just who is he?
The great Henry W. himself. Power and influence personified.
Well, tell us about your sons, Henry.
I wonder which one of my sons even knows what a merger is. The bookworm? The bottle worm?
And what about the Dameron daughter, a.k.a. Mrs. Thatcher?
And I suppose you still have your little singing friend to attend to, too, don't you, sweetie pie?
My what?
Well, I understand that she's back in town, and
Have you been you two find a better rooftop to fight on?
The family cleans up Thatcher's mess, and the drunk son even gives us a Hamlet quotation.
Alexander died. Alexander was buried. Alexander returneth into dust.
And Thatcher hires Paul Drake to be an unwitting mop man and gives some cash to the dead man's widow.
They talked a lot about prospecting for uranium. Apparently, her husband even loaned this man some money to do a little investing. And the man never paid it back. Instead, he went up there and made himself a fortune. Now he wants your husband to accept a gift, a debt of gratitude.
Accept a what of what?
$25,000, Mrs. Cowan.
Paul tries to do his job, but it becomes clear that he's a patsy. Paul gets upset. You wouldn't like Paul Drake when he gets upset. Dial up some rock'em sock'em action pronto.
Come back here. No two-bit private eye is going to blackmail me. Glad you did that.
Paul gets the worst of it, wakes up to the horrible song, I Need a Man, and finds Thatcher dead. The cops pick him up, and Hamilton and Tragg really don't have sympathy on our man Paul. But Perry's on the case. He's not taking any hush money from the Dameron clan.
If you say your friend Drake is a good man, I take your word for it. Then I might make him an offer, too.
In return for what?
I could testify to my son-in-law's nasty temper, his sarcastic denunciation of anyone with whom he might not agree. In other words, I can furnish evidence of provocation for manslaughter.
You're suggesting that Mr. Drake plead guilty, is that it?
At the worst, your friend might get perhaps 1 or 2 years in prison.
Perry deploys Della to call into question the confidence of the desk clerk at Thatcher's love nest.
You know, I think there's only one thing that could possibly slip by you. The truth.
Good night.
Then Perry puts the screws to Donna Cress. How about grilling her airsats Marilyn Monroe caterwauling?
I need a man.
But Perry wasn't going after Cress. He was going after her producer. Man, that guy's an unrepentant murderer.
I just wish I could have killed him 10 times.
Meanwhile, Perry gets the rare post-verdict kiss-off to a guy who wasn't the murderer, but is still a villain. Tell Henry Dameron off, Perry.
Mr. Dameron, I've never before met a person so far removed from humanity that he believed every one of his own children capable of committing a murder.
Only the ballistics expert gets to handle a gun in this episode. Tragg testifies to Thatcher's fractured jaw. Nice right hook, Paul. But doesn't put his mark on the murder weapon. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. A Della is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul for this episode concerns the fancy stereo system that Thatcher buys for Donna Cress. Here's his boast.
And look, stereo. The very best there is.
Okay, so it's 1959. Our Paul prompt is this. What kinds of features would have been on a high-end 1959 stereo? And does it look like Thatcher's boast was good, or was the dude just blowing smoke? Our Della for this episode, Basil Roysdale, aka Papa Henry W. Dameron.
I said that's enough.
Here are 10 things about Basil. Number 1, born in 1878 in Jersey City, New Jersey. Birth name Basil Spalding Millspaw. He actually changed his name to Basil Roysdale on February 8, 1915, just as he was about to get married for the first time. No clue where the name came from. Number 2, he attended Cornell for a short time, where he took courses in electrical engineering. His real passion, though, singing. He was a part of the Cornell Glee Club. Also fun, his great uncle was Ezra Cornell, the university's founder. Number 3, before becoming a busy character actor on stage and in films and on radio, the guy was a star bass baritone with the Metropolitan Opera Company. Between 1910 and 1918, his most frequent role was as the king in Verdi's Aida. Number 4, Roysdale was a voice teacher and coach, and beginning in 1916, Roysdale taught Lawrence Tibbett, an opera star who had more than 600 starring roles at the Met in his career. Roysdale apparently taught Tibbett physical exercises so that Tibbett could do his parts, could sing them while executing push-ups or rolling around on the ground. And Tibbett said Roysdale was the most important influence on his career. Number 5, Roysdale's first film role was in 1929's The Coconuts, which was a Marx Brothers Broadway musical turned into a film. Roysdale was one of the few holdovers from the Broadway cast. He played a detective who at one point was looking for his shirt. Cue the song.
You birds are all in on this thing, and you're all trying to keep me from finding my shirt. That's a lie, you whelp. Whelp, 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 whelp. I want my shirt. He wants his shirt. I want my shirt. He wants his shirt. He wants his shirt. I want my shirt. He wants his shirt. I want my shirt. He wants his shirt. I want my shirt. I want my shirt. I can't be happy without my shirt.
In a later interview, Groucho Marx said that Roysdale was responsible for introducing him to Gilbert and Sullivan. Groucho Marx ended up digging Gilbert and Sullivan so much that he starred in a production of Mikado. Number 6, Roysdale had a long radio career. He narrated the NBC Blue Network series Stones of History. In 34 and 35, he pitched Lucky Strike cigarettes and announced for the shows Mother and Dad and the Radio Reader's Digest. Number 7, he had some intriguing film roles. Go check out the 1949 Elia Kazan film Pinky, where our man is an attorney defending the title character in court. Or you might want to check out Broken Arrow, a 1950 Delmer Daves picture starring Jimmy Stewart. Here's Roysdale as a Christian general.
The Bible I read preaches brotherhood for all of God's children.
Suppose their skins aren't white. Are they still God's children?
My Bible says nothing about the pigmentation of the skin.
Number 8, Roysdale's work on TV included a role as General Andrew Jackson in the Disney miniseries Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier.
He's out hunting.
Hunting?
We're short on rations. He's gone across the river.
Across the river? That's enemy territory. Rations aren't what you're short on, it's brains.
Fess Parker, the actor who portrayed Crockett, said, Roysdale was a wonderful person. I enjoyed getting to know him. Number 9, Roysdale had 3 wives. Eleanor Mason Manier, who was an illustrator of children's books, Rose Swetnam, and then Kathleen Dobbin, who he was married to from 1945 to 1960. Number 10, Roysdale passed away due to surgery complications in October 1960, just about a year after he filmed The Case of Paul Drake's Dilemma. He was 82 years old. Our Perry for this episode involves Perry's friend's fee. We saw our dude take 5 yen as a retainer in the case of the Blushing Pearls. Here, Perry jokes with Paul about his fee, then lets Papa Dameron in on how much Paul will actually pay.
You know, when I leave here, I'm meeting Paul Drake at a restaurant. He'll pick up the check for dinner. That'll be the fee for my services. He's just a friend, but I never once doubted his innocence.
I'm way ahead of you, Perry. You're going to then instruct Paul to write off the dinner as a business expense. He'll keep the receipts, of course. Now that's being a real friend. Our theme for this episode, aptly, is trust. That's certainly not a word we associate with the Henry Dameron administration.
Tomorrow morning, there's a meeting of the board to discuss the Dameron Company merger. Doctors say I mustn't attend. I wonder which one of my sons even knows what a merger is. The bookworm? The bottle worm? Why do you suppose I picked Frank to marry Judith in the first place? Why? Because neither of you has the native sense to run a lemonade stand.
Money tends to erode trust because it makes you think that everybody is out to get something from you. More shocking is the lack of trust Lieutenant Tragg has in Paul. Paul has never really run afoul of the cops with anything that would stick. Do they really think this guy is capable of murder?
Why did Paul have to get mixed up in a thing like this in the first place?
Paul trusts Perry, and with good reason. Perry does right by him. It's an example for us all. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. The tete-a-tetes that Perry has with Papa Dameron are high points in this episode. We get one in the middle and one at the end. For this episode's Perry proverb, we head to that first encounter. Perry has good advice for Papa D and anyone who seeks to thwart justice for his own family's reputation.
I want you to think twice before putting me on the other side of any fence.
Mr. Dameron, I want you to think twice before withholding evidence just to protect your family from embarrassment.
The implication here is that Papa D doesn't really love his family. He just cares about the bottom line, cash. That's why Perry comes back to cash at the end of the episode. Paul's a friend, not a business partner. Perry doesn't worry about the money. Papa D's concern for the almighty dollar has left him suspecting his own family members of murder. Just think about this. The guy was going to hand the keys to his business to Thatcher. Thatcher was the cream that rose to the top in that family. You better think twice, Papa. Now let's grab a swig at the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand. Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we offer deleted scenes where we imagine some sequences that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Number 1, Donna Crest begs for a chance to sing an upbeat number, tries the Charleston, and it has disastrous effects. Number 2, Papa Dameron sits there while Ted and Charles try to define merger for 5 minutes. Ted gets closest by analogizing a business merger to what alcohol does when it enters his bloodstream. Number 3, during one of his jail visits, Paul begs Perry to sneak in a hoagie and some smokes. Prison food is awful. Number 4, we get an explanation for how a guy could support a wife, much less 4 of them, if all he does is man the desk at an apartment building in Los Angeles. And then number 5, Paul, Della, and Perry go out to eat after Paul's acquittal, and Perry orders 2 of the most expensive items on the menu and sticking. Number 5, Paul, Della, and Perry go out to eat. Perry orders 2 of the most expensive items on the menu before sticking Paul with the bill. One of them's for home, Perry explains. They laugh. And scene. Our Paul prompt from The Case of the Startled Stallion concerned summer stock companies.
You know, I hate to be persistent, but you see, I've been given this chance to buy into this summer stock company in Carmel as actor manager. I'd be out of your way for good.
That was our Las Vegas agreement.
I know it was, but that was before I heard about the stock company. Now, actually, I think I might be able to buy in for $3,500.
I regret to say that I couldn't find specific information about Callie Summers stock companies or the viability or cost of buying in. But here are some things I did learn. Number one, Summer stock, huge deal as a training ground for actors. Number two, the idea of buying in to a Summer stock theater now as an actor manager, questionable cash decision. Mostly you get involved with Summer stock if you're a fresh out of college performer and you want to work all day, every day to build your resume. Number three, if you go to Carmel by the Sea in the summer now, you would go to a performance at the Carmel Forest Theater, which actually would have been around in 1959. It's one of the oldest outdoor amphitheaters west of the Rockies. Wouldn't you know, it boasts an annual Shakespeare festival. And then number four, Earl Malden is still doing Summer stock at his age for the equivalent of $35,000 in 2022 cash. That guy's trying to buy in. Eesh, it's a tough look for sure. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode of the podcast in general. Was there something about the episode you'd like to comment on or correct? You can email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. All PerryPod episodes are now available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. Join us next time where we discover the fun you can have with tape splicing. I love the PerryPod, Jonathan. It's the best podcast in the world, Jonathan. It's the case of the golden fraud. Welcome, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat.